You know, one of the hardest truths we will ever have to accept is this: people who truly care about you are consistent. They may not be perfect, but they are predictable in their love, their concern, and their presence. But when someone doesn't care about you, really doesn't care, the most glaring sign is their inconsistency. And I'm not talking about someone having a bad day or going through a rough patch. I'm talking about someone who shows up like a stranger when it matters most. One day they're kind and attentive. The next they act like you don't even exist. That's not love, that's confusion wearing a mask. And let me tell you something, God is not the author of confusion. So if you're constantly feeling uncertain, anxious, or like you're walking on eggshells around someone, you need to stop and ask yourself, why am I holding on to someone who keeps letting go of me? A person who truly cares doesn't keep you guessing. They don't leave you wondering where you stand. Love doesn't operate in shadows, it stands in the light. The enemy uses inconsistency to plant doubt in your heart, to make you question your own worth. One moment you feel seen, the next you feel invisible. That's not love, that's manipulation. And people who don't care about you will play that game until your spirit is drained and your joy is gone. You deserve more than that. You see, consistency is the heartbeat of care. It's not about grand gestures, it's about simple, steady presence. You don't have to ask someone who cares about you to check on you, they just do. You don't have to beg them to be there, they show up. Not just when it's easy, but when it costs them something. That's how you know it's real. But people who don't care about you, they're only consistent in their inconsistency. They vanish when you need them most and reappear when it benefits them. That's not a relationship, that's a transaction. And relationships built on transactions will always collapse under the weight of real life. When pain hits, when grief strikes, when the bottom falls out, that's when you find out who's in your corner. Some of you have been blaming yourselves for their inconsistency, thinking maybe if I were quieter, maybe if I didn't ask for so much, maybe if I looked different, talked different, acted different, they'd stay. No, my friend, you don't have to shape shift to keep someone who's meant to walk with you. You don't have to shrink yourself to be loved. Real love makes room. Real care shows up. And let's be honest, some people just want to keep you around for the comfort you bring, not the connection you offer. They're not investing. They're extracting. And when someone is only consistent when it's convenient for them, they're not consistent, they're calculating. That's not care, that's control. God created you with value, with purpose, with dignity. And when someone sees you as optional, you better believe God sees them as temporary. Don't keep chasing after people who keep changing the rules. If they were sent by God, you wouldn't be confused all the time. You wouldn't feel small, overlooked, or disposable. You'd feel covered, you'd feel known, you'd feel safe. I want to speak to the one who keeps waiting for them to go back to who they were in the beginning. Let me tell you something, the version you fell for was often just a mask. You can't hold on to the memory of how they treated you for 2 weeks and ignore the reality of how they've treated you for 2 years. That inconsistency is not something to fix, it's something to flee. And don't confuse inconsistency with mystery. Some folks will call their emotional absence being complicated, but there's nothing complicated about someone who chooses to be emotionally unavailable. They're not complicated, they're careless with you, with your time, with your heart. And if someone plays tug of war with your peace, you need to let go of the rope. Every time you accept their inconsistency, you are teaching them how to treat you. You are telling them that you'll be available even when they're not. That your heart is on lie-away, waiting for them to decide if they want it. That's not love, that's torment. And hear me when I say this, you are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You are not too emotional, too deep, or too difficult. You just keep handing your heart to people who don't have the capacity to carry it. And maybe the greatest act of healing you can do today is this: stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. If someone's love is real, their presence will be reliable. Their words will match their actions, and their care won't come and go with the weather. Because true care doesn't vanish when it's inconvenient. It doesn't pause when life gets messy. And it doesn't fade when you're no longer useful. There's a quiet kind of pain that doesn't come from arguments or abandonment, it comes from feeling like a burden. When you open your mouth to speak and their eyes roll, or their body shifts, or their energy changes. That silent rejection cuts deep. And let me tell you, when someone doesn't care about you, they will make you feel like your presence is too much, your needs are too heavy, your voice too loud. They won't say it outright, but they'll show it in their sighs, their silence, and their sudden distance. That right there is one of the clearest signs that love has left the room. You were not created to beg for belonging. You were not formed by God to walk on eggshells. Love doesn't treat you like an obligation. And real care will never see your heart as a hassle. When someone truly values you, your pain matters to them. Your voice matters. Your joy and your sorrow, they're not an inconvenience to carry. They're part of the privilege of knowing you. But people who don't care about you, they avoid your emotions like a disease. The moment you bring up something real, your disappointment, your fear, your desire for more depth, they shut down. They grow cold. They say you're too sensitive or too dramatic or always starting something. That's not your fault. That's not your weakness. That's their refusal to engage at the level your soul requires. It's subtle, isn't it? The way they make you question whether you're asking for too much. You're not. You're asking for the bare minimum: respect, understanding, presence. And somewhere along the way, the world taught you that needing these things makes you needy. But God says, cast your cares on me. Why? Because He cares for you. That's the standard. Care looks like caring, not criticizing. Love looks like leaning in, not pulling away. I know some of you have been pouring out your heart to people who just stare blankly at you. People who nod but don't listen. People who wait for their turn to speak instead of hearing your cry. And that silent neglect, it's loud in your spirit, isn't it? You go home feeling more alone after the conversation than before it started. That's not care. That's presence without purpose. That's proximity without compassion. When someone really cares, they feel your weight without you having to scream. They see your tears before they fall. They lean in when you start to tremble. You don't have to perform, impress, or shrink. You just have to be. And they hold that space with grace. That's what love does. That's what care looks like. It doesn't flinch at the sight of your wounds. It binds them. It doesn't disappear when you're down. It stays. Even in the silence, especially in the silence. And let me say something to the one who's been carrying the friendship, the relationship, the family dynamic all by yourself. You've been the one to initiate the calls, the check-ins, the plans, the apologies. And when you finally need someone to lean on, there's no one there. That's not a relationship. That's an imbalance. That's a one-way street leading to emotional exhaustion. God never intended for you to live in a state of emotional starvation, surviving off crumbs of attention and fragments of affection. If someone keeps you guessing whether your needs are welcome, they've already given you the answer. You are not hard to love, you're just loving people who aren't invested in loving you back. Some of you are waiting on people to apologize for making you feel small, waiting on them to notice your effort, waiting on them to finally show up with the same energy you give. But hear me, you don't need closure from someone who never offered you care. You don't need permission to stop carrying someone who refused to carry you. It's not pride to walk away, it's protection. I want you to think about how Jesus responded to people who came to Him in need. He never once made them feel like a burden. The woman at the well, the blind man crying out, the woman with the issue of blood, He met them in their brokenness with compassion, not condemnation. And if you are following the Spirit of God, you should feel that same compassion from the people closest to you. If you don't, something's wrong. And sometimes the people who treat you like a burden are only mirroring how they see themselves. But that's not your weight to carry. Your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to appreciate it. Your voice deserves to be heard. Your soul deserves rest. Your needs are not negotiable. So if you've been made to feel like a burden in someone's life, it's time to ask, why am I still handing my heart to someone who doesn't handle it with care? There's something deeply revealing about who shows up when life gets quiet. You see, people who don't care about you won't come around to build with you. They'll only show up when they need something from you. They don't seek you to connect, they seek you to collect. And that's not friendship. That's not love. That's not relationship. That's using someone. And God didn't call you to be used by people who only know how to take and never learn how to give. You've probably seen it before: months of silence, no calls, no check-ins, not a word. Then suddenly a text. suddenly a call. But it's not to ask how you're doing. It's not to see how your heart is holding up or if you need a prayer or a friend. It's to ask for a favor, a loan, a connection, an opportunity. And you feel it, don't you? That disappointment, that hollow ache in your chest because deep down you hope maybe this time it was different. Maybe this time they were coming because they cared, but they weren't. The truth is, people who don't care about you only knock when their world falls apart, not when yours does. They're not checking in to lift your burdens, they're showing up to lighten their own. They've turned your heart into a resource, a rest stop, a convenience store they visit when their soul is on empty. And every time they do, you refill them while they leave you drained. That's not love, that's dependency masquerading as relationship. And it will wear you down. It will make you question your value because they're always reaching for your hand when they're falling, but where are they when it's your turn to weep? Where are they when your heart is tired and you need someone to stand in the gap for you? Jesus said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." That doesn't just apply to kindness. That applies to balance, to reciprocity, to the kind of care that flows in both directions. You're not meant to be a constant outpouring for someone who doesn't pour anything back. That's not mercy, that's misalignment. And I know it's hard to accept when someone you love sees you only as useful. You remember the good moments. You hold on to the laughter, the memories, the potential. But love based on memory can become a trap, because what you remember isn't always what they're still offering. Some people stop choosing you long before they stop calling you. Their presence remains, but their intention left a long time ago. You've got to open your eyes to patterns. If they only come when they're low, but disappear when you're empty, take that as the truth. Don't keep justifying selfishness because you're afraid of being alone. There's a kind of loneliness that comes from staying connected to people who never really show up for you. It's worse than being by yourself, because at least in solitude you know where you stand. But with them, you're always hoping, always waiting, always second guessing. And some of you have been so generous for so long, you've forgotten what it feels like to receive. You've been giving and giving, hoping one day they'd notice, hoping one day they'd match your energy, your heart, your time, but they never do. And it's not because you didn't give enough. It's because they never intended to give it all. The enemy loves relationships like that, where one person is exhausted and the other is entitled, where one is investing and the other is withdrawing. It creates distraction, it creates discouragement. And most of all, it keeps you from doing what God called you to do, because your strength is always being spent on people who were never meant to go with you. Listen to me, you are not a backup plan. You are not someone's emergency escape. You are not their fixer, their filler, their fallback. You are a child of God, created in His image, filled with purpose and promise. And anyone who doesn't treat you with that same honor is not sent to stay. Maybe they were meant to pass through. Maybe they were a lesson. But they are not your assignment. God doesn't send people into your life to drain you. He sends people who will sharpen you, uplift you, challenge you in love, walk with you in truth. So if someone only calls when they need help, but never when you need hope, that's not your person. That's not your tribe. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be bitter, but you do have to be wise. And sometimes wisdom means closing the door on people who only knock with empty hands. One of the hardest things to accept in this life is that silence speaks, and often it screams. You reach out with kindness, with sincerity, with a heart full of hope, only to be met with nothing. No response, no answer, just a void. And you start to ask yourself, did I say something wrong? Did I expect too much? Am I not worthy of a reply? But let me tell you something, silence is an answer. And when someone cares about you, they don't leave you wondering. There is a quiet cruelty in being ignored. It's not always loud, but it wounds deep. Because it's not just about the lack of words, it's the message behind it. When someone ignores your messages, your calls, your efforts to connect, they're saying something without saying anything. They're saying you're not important enough to respond to. And that kind of dismissal, that is not love. That is not care. That is not the fruit of a heart that values another. God is not the author of confusion. He does not teach us to play games with people's hearts, to withhold affection, to punish others with silence. He teaches us to love with clarity, to speak truth in love, to answer when called. So when someone consistently ignores you, not just once, not just when life is heavy, but habitually without regard for your heart, they are telling you exactly how they feel. And you must be willing to hear it, even if they never say it with words. I know it's painful, because you remember when things were different. You remember the laughter, the closeness, the way it used to feel when the bond was strong. You remember when they replied quickly, when they made time for you, when it seemed like you mattered. And now, you're staring at a screen, waiting for a reply that never comes. You're sitting with a phone in your hand, trying to make sense of silence that was never supposed to be there. But my friend, let me remind you of something eternal. Your value does not decrease just because someone refuses to acknowledge it. God does not wait days to hear from you. He does not leave your prayers unread. He responds, He listens, He cares. That is the model. That is the standard. And if someone consistently withholds a basic level of respect, that is not your cue to chase them, it's your cue to choose you. Some people confuse distance with dignity. They think that by ignoring you, they hold power over you. But there is no power in indifference, only proof that the connection has grown cold. And when love grows cold, it's no longer safe to warm yourself at its fire. You must walk away before you're burned by the absence of what once was. You deserve someone who doesn't make you question whether your message was seen, whether your call was heard, whether your presence is wanted. You deserve someone who picks up not because they have to, but because they want to. Someone who honors your voice, who respects your time, who values your heart enough to respond not just when it's convenient, not just when they feel like it, but consistently because they care. And hear me when I say this, your heart is not a burden and your effort is not too much. If someone makes you feel like it is, it's not your fault. It's their unwillingness to engage with the weight of real relationship. Some people don't ignore you because they're busy. They ignore you because you are no longer useful to them. That's the truth. And as hard as it is, you must receive it and release it. Don't keep sending messages into a space where your words are treated like noise. Don't keep calling people who send you to voicemail in both spirit and truth. If someone can see your name pop up and feel nothing, that tells you everything. If they can scroll past your message without even thinking to respond, that tells you something too. Don't explain it away. Don't justify their silence. Don't keep waiting at doors God already closed. You see, when God wants to protect you, He won't always take the person away. Sometimes He'll just let them show you who they really are. And silence is one of the clearest revelations. It strips away the performance. It exposes priorities. It shows you who's really in your corner and who's just keeping you around for convenience. There's a peace that comes from letting go of one-sided communication, from releasing the weight of waiting for people who never planned on answering, from realizing that being ignored doesn't make you small, it just frees you to go where you are seen. There's something you begin to notice when people stop caring. It's subtle at first. It doesn't always come through loud words or obvious actions. It creeps in quietly through the change in tone, the lack of excitement, the absence of tenderness. One of the clearest signs that someone doesn't truly care about you anymore is when your pain doesn't move them, when your tears fall and their heart doesn't break, when you speak of your struggle and they meet it with silence, indifference, or worse, dismissal. A person who cares will lean in when you are hurting. They will ask. They will listen. They will reach for your hand, not just with gestures, but with genuine concern. But when someone doesn't care, your pain becomes inconvenient. It becomes background noise in a world that revolves around their own comfort. And make no mistake, that hurts more deeply than any argument ever could. Because nothing is more painful than being vulnerable with someone who makes you feel like your suffering is insignificant. When Jesus walked this earth, He stopped for the broken. He didn't rush past the blind man. He didn't ignore the woman with the issue of blood. He didn't silence the cries of Bartimaeus. He paused. He listened. He responded. That's what love does. Love leans into pain. It doesn't turn away from it. So if someone consistently avoids your hurt, if they dismiss your anxiety, Ignore your sadness? Minimize your trauma? You are looking into the eyes of someone whose home is no longer aligned with yours. It's easy to be around people when they're happy. It's easy to sit at the table when the music's playing and the room is filled with laughter. But relationships are proven in the fire, not in the feast. The ones who care will show up when the lights go out, when your voice shakes, when your eyes are tired, when you're not the strongest version of yourself. They'll be there, maybe not with all the answers, maybe not with a perfect solution, but with presence, with compassion, with empathy. And yet there are people who once claimed to love you who will grow cold when you're at your lowest. They'll say, you're being dramatic, or you just need to get over it. They'll offer silence instead of support, judgment instead of grace. And that's when you realize you were never truly safe with them. Because anyone who truly loves you will never be comfortable watching you suffer in silence. Sometimes the people you held up the most are the ones who step over you when you fall. You gave them strength. You poured into them when they were empty. You were a shoulder, a listener, a light in their darkness. But now that your light has dimmed, they disappear. That's not loyalty, that's convenience. That's not love, that's self-interest. But don't let their lack of care change who you are. Don't let their coldness freeze your heart, because your compassion is a gift. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. The fact that you feel deeply, that you notice others' pain, that you desire to support and to heal, that's Christ in you. Don't bury it because someone failed to honor it. You see, people who don't care about your pain are revealing more about themselves than they are about you. Their lack of response isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their inability to love in a meaningful way. Some people are emotionally unavailable, some are self-absorbed, some are hardened by their own wounds. And though you may have hoped they would be different, you must accept them for who they've shown themselves to be. Stop explaining your feelings to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop reopening your wounds for people who never intended to help you heal. There's nothing holy about keeping broken company just because you're afraid to walk away. If someone can witness your pain and stay unmoved, they were never assigned to your healing. And you can't force someone to care no matter how loyal you've been, no matter how much history you share, no matter how much you've given. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is release the ones who won't make room for your pain, because God will surround you with people who don't just tolerate your wounds, but help bind them. People who won't run when you're weak. People who reflect His heart when yours is breaking. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be comforted. You deserve to sit in spaces where your sorrow is not an inconvenience, but a reason to draw closer. That's what real love looks like. That's what real care sounds like. And if someone has to be begged to provide that, then you already have your answer. One of the clearest signs that someone doesn't truly care about you is when they only show up when they need something. They disappear when you're down, stay quiet when you're hurting, and fall silent when there's nothing in it for them. But the moment they need a favor, the moment they're in trouble, the moment life stops going their way, you'll see their name pop up. You'll hear that voice again. Suddenly they remember your number. Suddenly they remember your kindness. But not because they cherish you, because they need something from you. That kind of presence isn't rooted in love. It's rooted in convenience, and it's painful, isn't it? To realize someone isn't checking in to see how you're doing. They're checking to see what they can get. They don't ask about your heart, they ask about your help. They don't reach for your friendship, they reach for your favor. And when the need is gone, so are they. Let me tell you something very clear. People who only remember you when they need you never truly valued you to begin with. They valued your service. They valued your strength. They valued what you could provide. But not you, not your soul, not your worth, not your presence. You can always tell the difference between someone who's with you and someone who's using you by watching what they do when you have nothing to give. Do they still call? Do they still show up? Do they still listen when the conversation isn't about fixing their problems? If not, then their connection was never about you. It was about what you could do. But God doesn't build relationships that way. When the prodigal son returned home empty-handed, it wasn't a transaction, it was love. It wasn't about what the Son had to offer. It wasn't about what he could give. It was about who he was. His Father embraced him not for his usefulness, but for his identity. That's how true love works. That's how real care looks. So many people today treat others like vending machines. Press a few buttons, get what you want, and walk away. And the moment the machine's empty, they kick it. They complain. They leave. But you, child of God, are not a vending machine. You are not here to constantly pour out and be emptied by people who never intend to pour back into you. You are not called to be everyone's emergency plan while they ignore your everyday pain. It's not selfish to notice these patterns. It's not prideful to set boundaries with people who only appear when they're desperate. Even the Lord himself withdrew from the crowds to be with the Father. He didn't let everyone pull on him endlessly. He moved with purpose. He poured out with wisdom. And if Jesus set boundaries, so should you. Don't be fooled by sudden attention. When someone disappears during your struggles but becomes friendly when they need a ride, a favor, some money, or emotional rescue, that's not love knocking, it's manipulation. It's a cycle, and if you're not careful, you'll keep answering the door every time they return, thinking it's relationship, when really it's just convenience dressed up in false affection. Now, I know this may be hard to hear, especially if the person is someone close to you. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's someone you've loved deeply. Maybe it's someone you believed in, someone you helped over and over again. And I know it's difficult to accept that someone you would have gone to war for won't even lift a finger when you're bleeding. But the truth will set you free, even when it stings. You were not created to be drained. You were not designed to be used. God made you with purpose, with value, with dignity. Your time matters. Your energy matters. Your heart matters. So when someone shows you that they only come around when they're in need, believe them the first time. Don't keep giving your best to someone who only shows up during their worst. Real love is consistent. It's there in the silence, not just the storm. It checks on you without a hidden agenda. It gives without keeping score. It stays when there's nothing to gain. That kind of love exists, but you won't find it in people who only remember your name when they're in crisis. Be kind, yes. Be generous, absolutely. But be wise, love with discernment, serve without slavery. Give without allowing yourself to be taken for granted. Because when someone cares for you, they don't wait until they need you. They walk with you, they talk with you, they make space for you even when they don't need a thing. Don't confuse demand with devotion.